Do you want to learn how to make epic camera animation like this? Then you have come to the right place.
What's up fam, it's Pretty Sav here and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be covering the part 3 of the product animation tutorial series. In this tutorial we are going to be working on the final shot. And the cool thing about this shot is that the product doesn't move at all. This is 100% camera animation. There have been 2 videos before this. In the first video we talked about the basics, texturing, lighting, basically setting up the scene. In the second video we talked about animation and fine-tuning your animation using F-curves and using speed ramping. Now in the last video we are going to be talking about this very cool technique for camera animation. So if you have not checked out the first 2 parts, you can just go in the link in the description to check out part 1 and part 2. Also in the description you'll find a link to the starter folder where you have all the files you need to start up this project, so you can follow me as I go. And finally, timestamps. If you check the description you'll find timestamps in case you want to jump to a specific point in the tutorial. Now let's go. Now I have Blender open now, and this is where we stopped in the last tutorial, shot 2. Now we are moving to shot 3. The first thing I would like us to do is copy this plane from shot 2 and paste it in shot 3. Just enable it and paste. Now we have our plane in shot 3. Let's mess with the color and make the plane a little bit brighter blue. Yeah, perfect. Now I'm going to show you how to make a cyclorama. A cyclorama is basically the backdrop you see in some photography or videography studios. Very easy to do. So just click on your plane, enter into edit mode, select one of the edges, make sure you're in edge select one edge at the back, extrude on the z-axis by hitting E and Z and extrude upwards. Now click on this edge, this intersecting edge, and bevel it, Ctrl B, bevel, use your mouse to add segments, click. Now we have our cyclorama. Now let's scale it to the x-axis so we have enough room. Yeah, so this is like our studio setup. Yeah, as we have always said in our tutorials, make sure you change your active camera to this camera we are working with right now. So the camera 3 will be our active camera. Let's rename it Cam 3. Make sure this is your active camera. So for this technique, we are going to be using the Bezier curve. We are going to use a curve to direct the path of the camera. So to do that, this is a crucial step because I didn't know this before and it really gave me problems. First thing, you need to reset your camera's rotation and position. Do that by hitting Alt G and Alt R. Alt G and Alt R. Now you can see that the camera is basically facing downwards from the origin. We have reset all the properties. Now let's add a Bezier curve. Shift A, go to Curve, Bezier. Now you have your Bezier curve. Let's look at it from the top view. It's very small, so scale it S and scale it up. You can see the curve. Now let's go into edit mode, select all by hitting A, and let's just rotate this curve so it's more like this. So let's make this background bigger, this whole thing, let's make it very big so we'll have enough space to work with. Good. Now this is the curve and this is our camera and this is our product. Okay, we are using just one product, so let's just delete this one. X to delete the second product. We should make our cyclorama invisible. Just hide it using H so we can work with just the Bezier curve and so we can see what we are doing clearly. Now what we want to do here is add an empty plane axis and scale it up. Now this empty is going to be controlling the camera. We're going to parent the camera to the empty. So click on the camera, then click on the empty, then Ctrl P to parent it. Now as usual, when we move the empty, we can move the camera. Now this empty is basically holding our cameras, so we don't need to touch the camera, we just need to move the empty. They move independently. Now you can move the camera separately, but when you move the empty, it just moves the whole thing. Now let's rename this empty to camera rig. Let's do cam rig. Now let's add some object constraints to our empty. This is our camera rig. This is basically like in cinematography, the rig you are using to hold your camera. The camera is just within the rig. So when you move the rig around, the camera should move. Now let's add a follow path constraint. And you want it to follow the Bezier curve. So under target, click on it and click Bezier curve. Okay, I think we should rotate our curve so it starts in the beginning. Z 180 and bring it back. Yeah, you want the cameras to start from here and end here. Good. Now click on our camera rig empty. If we move our offset, this value here, if we reduce it, you can see the camera is moving alongside the curve. So when we change the shape of this curve, no matter the shape we give it, the camera will always move alongside that shape of the curve. Very quickly, let's animate this offset very quickly. To do that, just hover your cursor on offset, then hit I, then go to about frame, let's drag this thing to 150, the end frame. Yeah, now let's go to frame 120 and change the offset to -100, then hit I again. Make sure your cursor is over it and hit I. Now when we play back, you would see that our empty is moving our camera along the path from frame 1 to frame 120. Now the next thing we need to do is to make sure that our empty is always looking at the product. So we have added the follow path constraint so it follows the path. Now let's add another constraint. Click on add object constraint and add track to. Now usually you want to track to the product, you want to be looking directly at the product, but that's not what we are doing here. If we are looking directly at the product, we won't have enough control. This camera rig that we are setting up is going to give us a lot of control and we'll be able to mess with this thing as much as we want. So to do that, let's add another empty. Shift A, empty plane axis, and scale it up so you can see it. Now let's rename this empty to F2. Change it to look at target, look underscore at underscore target. Man, naming objects becomes very difficult, especially when you have a lot of objects. So this is our look at target empty, and this is our camera rig empty. This is controlling the camera, and this is meant to control where the camera is looking at. So click on the empty, your camera rig empty. Under your track to, let's select this object as the object we want to track to. You can type it here, look at target, or you can use this eyedropper to just select it here. Now you will notice something, that when we play back, the camera is always looking at the object, no matter where it's going, it's always looking at it. You notice also that if I mess with this object, if I move it around, you can see the camera, it's moving as I move the empty. It's always looking at the empty wherever it is. So that's what we are trying to achieve. So we can make the camera look wherever we want. So let's put it somewhere in the middle here. And you'll notice that wherever the camera is going is always keeping an eye on the product. Now, this is the fun part. We need to mess with our curves. Just try to make your curve as creative as possible. You can make it round and round. You can make it in waves. You can make it in different patterns. The camera would follow that pattern and it might give you a cool result. So if you want to do something similar to what we did in the sample video, hit 7 to go to your top orthographic view. Click on your Bezier curve, hit tab to go into edit mode. Now, this curve is comprised of just 2 points, point 1 and point 2, and they are connected together to form the curve, and they have handles. This is basically like your F curves when you're working in your graph editor. Let's click on the move tool. Now you can click on any of these handles and do your normal operations like G, R, and S. That is to grab, to scale, and to rotate. You can do that here. And you can also extrude. To extrude, hit E and you create a new point. So basically the curve keeps increasing as you're extruding. So what we want to do now is to just try to design the curve the way we want it. Let's try to create a pattern with this. Oh, let's get out of edit mode, Alt H. Now you can see our background. Okay, let's go back to our top view, edit mode, and mess with this. If I use G to straighten this, it becomes straight. Now I can use extrude to drag this one out. I can rotate these handles. You can see we are basically directing the curve. If I rotate it this way, that means I want the curve to go in this direction, but if I rotate it this way, you can see how the curve is just bending in that direction. Now extrude again, rotate. You can see how I'm designing the curves. Extrude again, rotate in this direction, extrude one more time, and extrude again. So just take your time. You can make this to be as complicated as possible. So let's just try to fine-tune our curves now. Just make sure there's no sharp edge and everything is as smooth and circular as possible. Okay, I think we are good with this. Let's play it back. Okay, that's interesting. So you can see that our camera is starting from the bottom. We can adjust that because we have our target empty. Go out of edit mode. If we didn't have this target empty, we wouldn't be able to adjust where the camera is looking at. It would just be looking at the product. But since we have this, we can just raise this up. Let's raise it to the point of EEVEE. And you can see now the camera is looking upwards. The camera is now looking upwards towards the product. We want the camera to be looking directly at the product. So how do we do that? We move the whole curve. So let's move the whole Bezier curve, GZ, upward. Now you can see what's happening. The camera is now looking directly forward. So let's just try to arrange it, move the curve and move the target in a way that the camera is looking directly at the logo. Cool. You can even go into orthographic view and adjust it to make sure it's just directly straight, looking directly at the logo. Making sure that the empty and the curves are just lined up. Okay, good. Now that we have done this, let's shift the curve GY towards the product so it totally encompasses the logo. Yeah. Now let's play this back. Okay, this is moving too far. I think it's going too far. I want it to start curving from here. Yeah, so let's adjust this curve. So this just takes a lot of adjustment to get exactly what you are looking for. Depending on the kind of look you want, you are going to adjust these curves and mess with these handles to get the exact vibe you are going for. So let's scale this down a bit and bring it forward. And let's see how this will look. And this guy is even too far. Let's bring it forward. Let's see how this will look. Okay, this is this is way far back, way far back. Let's delete this vertex. Delete. So our animation will end here. Even this is very far from our products. Let's move it forward. GY. So it's somewhere here. As you can see, I'm basically just messing with our curve. We can make our plane wider, S in the x-axis, so we don't get to see those edge cuts off. Okay, let's see this now. Oh great, this is good. That is good. Let's make sure our background is not reflective. We don't want a reflective background, so increase the roughness to the maximum. Okay, so we have a good animation. You see, we are basically moving the camera in very interesting ways. So depending on how you make your curve, the camera is going to move that way. If you do this, the camera will go that way. If you do this, the camera will go that way. So just get creative with it. Now we have basically done the animation aspect. It's already done. Now what we need to do is to fine tune using our F curves. So click on this drop down and select Graph Editor. Make sure your camera rig empty is selected. And now we can see our graph. If you can't see your graph, just hit A and full stop and it will show you the graph. Now, this is basically the graph for our offset. So what we want to do is to do what we learned in the last tutorial, speed ramping. So at different points in this whole movement in the curve, we want the camera to slow down and we want the camera to speed up. So let's just go through this really fast. We covered this in depth in the last tutorial. So we want it to go really fast here, then slow down somewhere here. So let's duplicate this first keyframe, bring it down here, around here, then duplicate it one more time and bring it somewhere here. So this should go from fast to slow. Okay, that's too much. Okay, so we see that it started fast, then it became slow, and at this point I would like for it to become fast again. So Shift D to copy this keyframe and bring it down. If you don't understand what I'm doing here, please just watch the part 2. We cover this in depth. So it gets fast again. Yeah, so it gets fast again, then it becomes slow. Let's bring it down here. So it becomes slow one more time. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think this should go down even more. So let's check this out. Okay, the speed ramping is working, but we need to smoothen this entire graph. So use your handles and make sure the transition from slow to fast is as smooth as possible. Just make sure there are no sharp edges in your graph and it's just smooth curves and there are no bumps. You just want very smooth curves. Okay, I think we should make this longer than 150 frames. So it depends on how long you want your animation to be actually. Let's make it 180. Okay, this needs to be faster. Okay, it's having a weird jerk here. I think it's because of our curve. Yeah, our curve is not smooth enough. You can see that we can see the edges. We don't want to see any edges. We want it to be very smooth. So let's go into edit mode. Hit A to select all the vertices. Right click and hit subdivide. Now the subdivision has increased the number of points. It has put points in between each point, and you can see now we have a smoother curve, like it's way smoother. Now let's go back to our graph editor. Just make some fine adjustments until you get exactly the look you are going for. Now this is up to you, like this whole creative aspect is up to you. You can make it slow or fast wherever you please. Now you can see that there is a problem. Our product is being cut off. So the camera was looking at EEVEE from the beginning, but at this point you don't want it to look like this. You want the camera to be focused on the center. To do that, we have to animate our target empty. This empty needs to be animated. So let's put a keyframe here. From the moment where it moves out, let's say from frame 10, I location. Now from here to here, let's say frame 50. We want this empty to go down so that our product is centered in the very center. GZ, make sure your product is in the center, then add another keyframe, location. So from here to here, our target will move downwards. You can see the target moving down from here to here. As we move forward, our target is moving downwards. You can see it here. So that would correct the problem we had, and you can do this throughout the animation. So your camera will be looking at different parts of your product. You know, this is very important when you have a complex product that has many features, probably like a new sneakers, and you want to show off different parts of it. So you have to be changing where your camera is looking at as you are going around the product. I think let's make this part of the curve a little bit closer. Yeah, I want it to move a little bit closer to the camera. So click on this, move it a little bit closer. Make sure it's still smooth. Let's see how it looks. Okay, great. Now, if you remember from the sample video, we focused on this text here. That's just for an example, so you know how to do it. We focused on this text here at this point. So we want these targets to actually keep moving, depending on where we are with our product. I think from frame 60, let's add a new keyframe, location. Now at this point, when it gets to frame 80, you want our target to have moved downwards, GZ. So you want our target to have moved downwards. So at this point, you want the focus to be on this text. You want the text to be in the middle. So I, location. So you can see that our target will just keep moving from EEVEE to the middle to frame it up, and then to the text. You can see it here. Now this introduces another problem. You can see from the orthographic view that the camera is looking downwards. We don't want it to look downwards at the product. We want it to look directly at the product. So another thing you can do to customize your camera animation is to adjust the height of your curves. So remember that your curve has different vertices, and you can move these vertices up or down. As you can see, you can move these vertices up or down to determine the height at that point. So instead of your camera just going straight around something, you can make it go higher and low. So at this point in the video, this is the vertex that is closest to the camera. So we want this vertex to be lower. So GZ to bring it lower. You can see that the camera is now leveled with the product. Okay, don't bring it so low that it intersects with the floor plane. That shouldn't happen. Let's bring it a little bit higher. Yeah, so at this point we'll be focusing on the product. Okay, now our camera is looking upwards. Let's bring this higher. Perfect. We want this to be in the center. So we can see the two things we did to control where the camera is looking at and the angle the camera is looking at. If we adjust this target empty, this is basically controlling wherever the camera is looking. Now you can customize this as much as you want. You can move the target empty up and down to determine where it's looking at. You can move the height of the Bezier curve. You can change the height of some specific vertices to customize the direction in which the camera is looking. And you can also mess with this. You can also mess with your camera rig empty to determine your specific position of the camera. You can see you can do some really insane things by just moving and animating this empty. And finally, you can animate the camera itself. You see, you can make some very interesting animation by animating the camera itself. I think let's do that now. When it gets here, let's animate our camera. Make sure your camera is selected. Hit I and rotate. When it gets here, we want the camera to rotate from here to here. So to about frame 50, make sure your camera is selected. Hit R and rotate the camera slightly, probably this way. Then add another keyframe. Then at this point, from here to here, let's rotate the camera just a bit again. Hit R and rotate it however you want. Let's just make it bend like this. I rotation. Then in the end, at this point, at frame 120, let's rotate our camera back to normal and add another keyframe. So basically we are playing with the camera rotation as we go through the animation, and this will give the effect of the product rotating, but the product is not actually rotating, it's just the camera. So let's play it back and see how it looks. Wonderful. So you can take this concept and expand on it as much as you want. This is a full camera rig, like you can control this camera however you please. So take this concept and make something really creative out of it. Find a product, find a model online, use the one I gave you and create something dope. Okay, you can see that at the end, our product is not in the center of the shot. To fix this, we have different things we can control to fix whatever we want. To fix this, what we need to change, we need to change the position of our target. To make it fully centered, we can easily adjust the position of our target. From here, we can add a keyframe for location, I location, and at this point, we can change the location and make sure the product is in the center. Add a new keyframe. Now let's add our lighting. Let's copy our lighting from the second shot. Select our area lights and select our point lights. Ctrl C to copy. Go back to shot 3 and paste it. Make sure our product is in the very center. Oh, you can see how beautiful the shot looks before and after. Oh my god, it looks so nice now. Great. This looks so good, and it looks like we are moving our product, but we are not. We are just moving the camera. And if you even want to make it a whole lot more interesting, you can now move your product. Imagine having the control of moving the camera however you want and still animating your product. That's going to look very insane. So you guys should play with it. I think we can render now. Ctrl F12 to render. awesome. This looks good. Wow. I really want to say congratulations if you made it to this point in the tutorial. You are awesome. You are really awesome. You know, this year I want this channel to be a place for creative people, you know, people that want to learn stuff, you want to try out new things. So I'm going to try as much as possible to create content that helps creative people like you and me to be the best version of ourselves. So I hope you really enjoyed this series. This is the whole workflow I go through when I'm making a product animation project, and I hope you actually take these things you have learned here and build something really awesome out of it. So anyways, thanks for watching. It's still Creative Xavier. I would love if you like this video, drop a comment, subscribe, you know, all that good stuff, and share. Make sure you share with your friends. If you have friends that are also creatives, let them know, let them join in, let them create cool stuff. So I will catch you in the next video. Stay awesome. Peace.